Hello, everybody, and today I'm reviewing regular shows since I'm reviewing a Halloween special from some of my favorite shows, but decided to do Terror Tales of the Park. I've always wanted to review this from regular show, but I just haven't made the time, but now is the time. So, if you do know regular show, they always do a Halloween special every year on their seasons, but I think it started in season 2 or 3. But it's basically where the main characters gather together on Halloween and tell scary stories, and it's kind of just the writer's fun way of just having our characters in situations that involve Halloween. And usually we get 3 stories, but sometimes there's 4, and there's only been a few Halloween specials in this show, but let's discuss the first one. So the first one is where it opens with Mordecai and Rigby helping Pops clean out his junk, and it like the only thing they keep are a pair of sunglasses. They only think that thing's cool, but what they do find is a creepy doll in a case called Percy. So, I don't know if I've said this before, but I'm not a fan of creepy doll movies. I've watched Annabelle, the Goosebumps, and I know about Chucky, but this doll, we get Percy, who's like, who has like a string like Woody, where you pull it and then he says something. But this one, he says in a creepy voice, "I'm going to draw on your face." And so this doll, like, is obsessed with drawing on people's faces. But Mordecai and Rigby, of course, think it's creepy, but Pops loves it. But the two laugh it off. But the next day, Pops is discovered on the swing by Mordecai and Rigby, and they find that he is covered in marker. And they're asking what happened, and then Pops says, like, it was Percy and him playing. But they tell him to just throw away the doll. And they say dolls aren't cool. But they end up throwing away the doll. And then they think things are going as usual. Mordecai and Rigby are playing their video games. But they hear a loud thud upstairs. And they think it's Pops. But then it gets even louder. And so they check it out. And they can't open the door because it's locked. But they peek through it. And it turns out the doll is alive and talking to Pops and slapping his tea. He just says he wants to draw on his face. But Mordecai manages to bust open the door, and they tell Percy to stop. But that's where he lunges at them and attacks Rigby. But Mordecai manages to whack him with a bat. And then Percy's like, "You're all going to be drawn on." And then he runs outside. But then Pops explains how the doll just attacked him. And so they decide they must get rid of this doll. And so they go into the basement. But they try to find Percy, but he manages to take out both Mordecai and Rigby. He's even looking at them saying, "Draw, draw." And so he uses the marker, but he is knocked down, I'm pretty sure. But wait, no, once he knocks down Mordecai, he's like, "Pops, give me the marker." But then Pops says no. And so we get this funny montage where Pops runs up at Percy, kicks him, and then he falls into the baler and dies. And then Rigby's like, "I told you dolls weren't cool, Pops." And so that's that story. But so it opens at them in the house, and the guys all say, "That was lame." But they decide to just not invite Muscleman and High Five Ghost, who decide to leave the house. But this is where their story begins, where they are looking through the fog, but instead they find a RV, an old one. It's not theirs, but they go into it, and they think it's super cool, but they decide to throw it down into the crash pit. So this is the first time we see the crash pit in this show. It's where Muscleman and High Five Ghost bond, and they basically just find old cars and throw them down the crash pit, and they explode. But while searching, it turns out this trailer is more haunted than they realize. We see a bunch of ghost these ghost death metal band who apparently has been living in this trailer, and we don't know how they died. But they capture Muscle Man and High Five Ghost, and they tried to explain that they were just trying to use it for the crash bit. But the guy's like, you want to throw in the crash bit, huh? And so they go to the crash pit, and Muscle Man actually gets all his friends to come and watch the event. But they're like, but our fellow musicians decide to just play their band, but they're like, no. They're saying it's lame. But Muscle Man says the music's terrible, but he decides he must find a way out, but he can't open the doors. And so what does he do? He finds a brick and smashes it onto the brakes of the RV, and the RV falls, and all our characters fall to their deaths and explode. And I think it explodes the crowd too. But Muscle Man and Five Ghosts go up like they're ghosts, and then Muscle Man's like, I never thought it was going to end. He says, oh wait, I'm dead? And then High Five goes like, yeah. But they're cool with it. They just high five, and that's that story. But what happens in the third story? It's where Mordecai and Rigby are trick-or-treating. Mordecai's dressed up like a dad who has like these sheets of ghosts that are secretly balloons. And Rigby's dressed up like a robber. And Mordecai actually tries to go up to a lady and get candy, but he accidentally misses the like voice box. And she realizes that those aren't kids. And then Mordecai just gets out of there. Then Rigby jump scares her as a robber. But he ends up getting the door slammed on him. But the two are just trick-or-treating until they see a creepy-looking house. And and Rigby decides he's going to get this candy. But Mordecai's like, hey, man, we got to leave. But then Rigby doesn't listen. And so because he goes to the house, but it doesn't answer. But he's mad because of that. And so he decides to throw eggs at the house. And he was almost caught by the cop. But Rigby eggs the house. And then out of nowhere, a wizard shows up. And he's voiced by Mark Hamill. And he says, you're going to pay for that. And then he disappears. And then Rigby is like freaked out if something happened to him. But Mordecai's saying you're just being paranoid. And then he starts to see this wizard everywhere he goes. But he starts to not feel so good the next day. And he even tried to tell Benson and Skips, but they don't believe him. But this is where things take a turn when Rigby starts to turn into a house. And that's what happens to him. He turns into a gigantic house. And Mordecai actually tries to confront the wizard, but no one's home. And he even tries to say he's sorry. But our fellow characters go into the house, and there's like a picture of Eileen there, Rigby's girlfriend. And they decide, and then Muscle Man even tries to go to the bathroom, but Rigby's like, no. But they get a phone call from the wizard. And then, I think like Benson tries to answer, being like, hey, you can't do this. And then the wizard's hands come out of the phone and choke Benson, but they manage to back off. And he decides that the wizard's going to come to the house late that night. And that's what he does. And our fellow characters gather around the house to stop this wizard. But this is where this is probably the most scary story out of the three. But he easily takes out all of them. He takes out Muscle Man when he tries to shoot him with his shotgun because a limo shows up. But he just whispers in his ear saying, pay, you're all gonna pay. But then he grabs Muscle Man, and then we hear gunshots, and all the characters are shocked to see Muscle Man with his entire skin ripped off, and then he says, I knew I was ripped, and then he dies. When I saw this originally as a kid, I was told I was not allowed to watch regular show after that, but I watched it anyway. But he manages to take out the whole group. He throws Skips in a fireplace. He throws Pops in a closet. I think he drowns Benson, and I think all his last, I think, high five goes to get sucked into the phone when he answers it. But Mordecai's taken out. He's the last one standing. And his head is literally sliced off screen. And he says, so this is what it's like to be tall as Rigby. But what happens next is the wizard shows up. Rigby says he's sorry. But we find out why the wizard did all this. He just wants revenge for getting his house egged. And then Rigby's like, wait, you killed all my friends just to do that? And then he's like, yup. And then a giant egg falls on Rigby. And that's that story. And then all our characters are kind of like shocked. They're like, ooh. But then Muscle Man's like, ooh, that's a weak story. But then Rigby's like, that's not it. But then we get a jump scare from the wizard. Rigby turns into the wizard and says, Happy Halloween. So that's the episode. So I think this is the best of the Terror Tales ones. Not that the other ones are bad. I like the other ones. But this one felt the most scary, the most intense. It's where the creators just kill off the characters in these fictional stories the characters come up with. And yeah, it is the writers having fun. I think the best one was easily the wizard one for how bizarre it is. Rigby turning into a house, which is funny. But the Muscle Man one was okay. I do like the end where they fall off into the crash pit. The doll one was definitely creepy for sure, because the doll is obsessed with drawing on things, and Pops even thinks it's funny. But yeah, these are pretty good stories. I give it like an 8 out of 10. Maybe next year we'll do Terror Tales 2. But the next review for Halloweenish reviews, we're probably going to review the Family Guy special. The recent one that came out. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this review. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.